All right, my friends, welcome back. This is going to be part 31 of my presentation on the flood and Noah's Ark. And we're kind of creeping along at a snail's pace with the fossil definitions. But it's kind of good to go through this. And so, again, I'm not an expert on all this. And so I'm just sharing with you things that I have learned. And so, before I get into what I've got today on the slides, I wanted to have a little show and tell with you. And the first thing I'm wanting to show you that I got, I used to work, I've had a lot of jobs. Let's just put it that way. I've had a lot of jobs in my life. And so I've got a lot of interesting stories. There's no doubt about it. And my last one being my last, I guess you could call it a career. The longest one I'd been with, 16 years, was with the sheriff's office, Rowan County Sheriff's Office here in North Carolina. And I took an early retirement from that. And so I was able to early retire after 15 years. Didn't get a huge pension, but enough to where I don't have to work full time anymore. And so I retired at 50. And so I'm this right here, this October, at the time of this of recording, will be my 5th year. And so, but my wife and I, we do a lot of RV traveling and stuff like that on during the weekdays usually. And so I just work on the weekends, 16 hours at the time of this presentation, about 16 hours a week is all I work to kind of supplement what I'm not getting, and that affords me to do what I want to do. And so, we live an unusual life. I'll say that. And so, but I get to do what you're seeing now. And so, but we're debt free. We don't owe anything. And so, by the grace of God and His mercy, it's everything that we have is because of the Lord. Everything that we have. And so, we're very fortunate. We're very fortunate and very thankful for the things that we have. And so, we're not rich. But we're rich in other things. And so, but at any rate, one of the jobs that I had when my kids were young, I want to say they might have been in elementary school, maybe just starting to get into middle school age. I was working for a company called Wingfoot Commercial Tire. And I went around all the Penske locations, and what I did is I would bring them retread tires, and then I picked up their old tires, brought it back to the plant, and I would grade them. There's a certain way that we had to grade them, and then when I brought them back to the plant, they retread those tires again. Only they don't only do it a certain amount of times, and then they trash them. And so, but they would regrade them again. And so, and then I would bring them back the retread tires. And so now one of the locations that I serviced was in Wise, Virginia, if I'm thinking correctly. I'm not for sure 100% on that, but I'm thinking it was in Virginia. I don't know why Wise, Virginia. It seems to be coming to mind, the area. But there was a location there, a salesman whose father worked for a coal company. And so now what they did is they stripped the coal. They didn't go into a coal mine, but they kind of stripped it off the land. They would just take it off the land. If you'll notice this picture here, I'll put it up on the slide here. What they're doing in this, I'll put a box around what I believe they were doing. And so this right here is what they were doing to the land. And they were just on the outside, getting the coal from the outside of the land, just kind of scraping it off. And so, but at any rate, he never took me to the locations, but we got to talking about creationism and fossils and all that type of stuff, and just a really neat guy. And so, he was telling me of some of the things that his father found while doing his job, and said that one time he found a fossil of a lizard, and so he said it was just an amazing thing. And so He said it was one of his father's prized possessions. And so, but he said he had all types of things in his house that he would find while they were doing that. And so, at one time, I had some extra time on my hands, and he says, "Do you want to go see something neat?" And so what he did is he took me to one of the areas that they had already had done some excavating on, and it was probably just a big mound of rock, just a big mound of rock. And when I got out of the truck, I looked around and my mouth about hit the ground, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And he said, "What?" I said, "These rocks, all these, it's sedimentary rock, but it had fossils all over them. Guys, I want to say there was probably thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of fossils all around me. And they were everywhere. They were all over the place. And so I gathered up a bunch, and he didn't even realize what he had. Now, some of them, the rock hadn't popped apart, and so we were taking rocks and splitting them apart and exposing fossils. And so he said I could come up there anytime I wanted and gather as much as I wanted. I never did do it, but it was just amazing the things that we were looking at. Mostly all of them were plants that we were seeing. And so I took some of them home, and I've given away some of them. And so I've got some of them out in my flower garden. So it was just amazing. We spent probably a good hour doing that. But one day I was visiting the Penske location where he worked at. He was a salesman, and he said, "Hey man, I got something for you." And what he did is we went outside in his truck, and he gave me several of these right here. If you can see this right here. Now I've got I want to say maybe 3 of these. I've got 2. I'm looking at 2 right now. There's one on my desk right here. I'm using it as a book, to put my books up against, and so, but this one right here, if you can see it, is the other one, and you can see right there where part of the plant had started turning to coal. And so it's just amazing. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some pictures, but this is one of them. It's a log. It's just a log, and you can see kind of some of the impressions right there, some of the texture of it. But again, this is a plant. Now, guys, what I have in my hand, what I've been told by another creation speaker, because I didn't know what it was, and so I had asked around. I got up with Ian Juby, another creation speaker, sent him some pictures, and he said, "Man, you got a giant reed, a giant fossil reed." Now, this is not the actual plant. What this is here, I'm going to put this down because it's getting mighty heavy. And but he said, "Donnie," he said, "what you have is the inside. If you take like a reed, I'll tell you what, look on the screen there. This is what reeds look like. This is when you think of reeds, this is what a reed looks like." And so now what he told me was, he said, "What you have is a giant one." He says, mine, and he says some of the, he has some reeds nearby where his house was, and he says they might get a couple feet high. He says, "What you have is a giant one." And he said, "Now what you have is what is called, it was an infilling into the plant that fossilized, and then the plant rotted away from the outside, or in this case, it had turned to coal. And what I was left with is just the inside of that plant." If you'll notice on the screen here, this is so some close-ups of what I just showed you. And again, the outside of this impression, or this infilling that had hardened the stone, the outside of the plant turned to coal. And he said his father was stripping it away from the mountain, and it fell out. It fell out, and when it hit the ground, it broke into logs. And so, and with reeds, you got little bumps or little sections here and there. I'm just thinking that's probably the reason it broke into logs, is so everywhere where one of those little sections was, that's probably what happened. That's the reason it broke into those logs, everywhere those little sections were. And but this is what it looks like. And if you'll notice on this picture here, I actually got this from the University of Kentucky, the Kentucky Geological Survey. And this right here is a good visual on what I have here. If you'll notice to the far left, that red box there, that's what I have. You see fossil pith cast, a fossil pith cast. Now the inside of that center there is called a pith cavity. That's Pith cavity. And so evidently when the plant had broke, let's just say during the flood, when you got everything being broken up and smashed around, this plant was broke, and it had infilled during the flood. It had infilled with material, and that material hardened up and quote unquote fossilized an impression of what the inside of that plant was like. And that's what I got, is the impression. You can see the impression on the outside, around the outside edges of this fossil that I have. What they would call a cast, or the impression, an impression cast on the inside of it, is what I got. And so, but that picture right there, if you'll notice, it's kind of showing the whole thing, how it happened. You start off with the living, what they call calamites, basically a reed-like plant, and then you got a flood right next to that. It got real interested that they mentioned the flood, and so the plant dies and sediment infills it on the next one, and then the plant rots. The pith cast remains. That's that infilling. They call it a pith cast. And then the plant falls over, is knocked over in a quote unquote flood. Interesting. And then the sediment is laid on top of that cast. And then the outside of that plant rots away. In this case, it turned into coal. And then all you're left with is just an impression of the inside of that plant. And that's what I have here. And so I thought it was kind of neat that I have a giant reed. Things grew much bigger before the flood. And so I'm just really honored that I have something like that. And the guy just gave it to me because he saw my interest. Now, this next thing I want to show you is this item right here. This right here is a petrified paper rose. Petrified paper rose. And I got this from Vance Nelson. If you'll notice on the screen here, this is his ministry here, Creation Truth Ministries. Creation Truth Ministries. And I bought this one from him. I can't remember what I actually paid for it at the time. I've had this for probably about a decade now. And but he actually still sells them if you want to buy one. They're $135. That's Canadian. And so I actually think that's actually going to be cheaper as far as United States currency. And so I'm not sure if you're interested in that, you can get up with him and find out. Just look at that, or you can put it in Google and find out what it actually is. It just seems like it may be a little cheaper than the Canadian money there. But at any rate, $135 if you want a petrified rose there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you that information that he has right there about this paper rose. And it says in Karlovy Vary, Czech Republic, there is a petrifying facility underneath one of these streets. We have visited the location and described it via photographs and text in our newest book, Untold Secrets of Planet Earth, Catastrophic Caves. At this location, the thermal mineral water is directed to flow over handmade paper roses. After 14 days, they gain a coat of aragonite, a form of calcium carbonate. The water is high in carbonates and other residual minerals. The red-orange coloring of the objects is due to the high iron content of the water. The red-orange coloration is deposited during the drying phase. The iron in the water reacts with the oxygen in the air to form a hematite limonite layer on the outside. They are neither permineralized nor petrified. If one wants to get technical, most people without a geology background, however, would just call them petrified. They show rock does not take, or what he's showing here, this evidence here, is shows that the rock does not take a long time to form. Rock only takes the right chemicals and physical conditions to form. And so that is this rose here that I got from Vance Nelson. Now, if you want to learn more about Vance Nelson, go to Creation, www.creationtruthministries.org, and he has a bunch of books, guys. The guy is extremely knowledgeable about the topic of creation and fossils and all types of stuff. He does a lot of hands-on, and that's what I like about him. And so I've had a lot of email correspondence with him. I've learned a ton of stuff from him, and many of the things that I have showed in the past about dinosaurs and man coexisting together, I have showed you. I've got actually from Vance Nelson, I've got a number of replicas of different things that he sells that you can buy from him. And so, but he's active. I still believe he will come to churches and do presentations. And so you'll have to get up with him and find out more. And so I will say this, you will not be sorry that you got up with him. He's extremely knowledgeable on the subject, and he's a no-nonsense guy and really details his evidence. And so he's one that I trust when I have a question about something that I go to. And so, but this is that book here, Catastrophic Caves. And so I've got all his books. And so in my library. And so, and as you can see, guys, it's a thick book. And so there's all types of stuff in here. And so including the mentioning of the stalactites and stalagmites, how they form very rapidly. And so, but I tell you what, I've got about 19 minutes on this already. I think I'm going to just stop here with where I'm at. And when we come back, we're going to continue on with some more fossil definitions and some examples of those. And so, but I just thought that, hey, let me do a little bit of show and tell and show you some of the things that I got. And so that's quite interesting. But you guys take care. I love you and hope the Lord blesses you real good. Bye-bye.